let me tell you about the hungry coat. Mullah Nasruddin was a wise, scholarly theologian. He was also a hard-working, industrious farmer. And one day, during the Feast of Ramadan, he was working hard on his farm. As the sun was beginning to set, his stomach was beginning to grumble, and his mind was already somewhat in the future, because one of the wealthiest members of his community had invited everyone to come and gather for a feast to break the fast on this evening. Mullah Nasruddin could already almost taste the figs, the chicken, the beef, the lentils, all of the good and delicious things that would be spread on that table for everyone to share and enjoy. The only problem was that he had worked so long and so hard that it was almost time to gather for the feast already. If he went home to wash himself and change his clothes, he'd be late. So he decided he would go directly from working in the fields to the feast. When he arrived at the door, a servant answered and immediately noticed his dirty, tattered, worn work clothes. They also recognized his face and they let him in, but with some reluctance and certainly without a word of welcome. Mullah Nasruddin arrived at the feast, at the table where all the other members of the community were gathered, and they likewise looked him over scornfully, questioning. None of them issued a welcome, a hello. No one moved aside to make space for him at the table. They noticed his clothes, and they continued their conversations. So he grabbed a plate and he reached between people to choose the food that he wanted and the things that he had been so excited about eating. There were the figs and the chicken and the beef and the lentils that he had been counting on all day. But somehow, once he had his food, his appetite was gone. But being a wise and scholarly man, he put his plate down in a corner and went home. He washed himself. He dressed, and he put on his finest coat, a coat with many pockets, many colors made of silk, one that the members of the community had commented on before. And indeed, when he returned, the servant opened the door and looked favorably upon his coat and said, "My, Mullah Nasruddin, you're looking fine this evening. We're glad that you could join us. Please come in." When Mullah Nasruddin came to the table in his clean and fancy dress, well, a few people moved aside and invited him to sit next to them and asked how his day had been and offered him some of the delicious foods that were spread on the table. Well, this time, the mullah saw the figs and put one into his pocket and said, "Eat, coat, eat, enjoy." And he reached out for some nuts and he put those into another pocket and said, "Eat, coat, eat." He wasn't so sure about putting chicken or beef in his coat, and maybe lentils either, but there were some dates, and he put those into his coat's pocket and said, "Eat, coat, enjoy the meal." Finally, the host of the feast had watched enough and silenced all the conversation and addressed the mullah directly. "Mullah Nasruddin, lovely that you could be with us this evening. Why are you putting food into your coat pockets?" And the mullah replied, "Yes, thank you so much for the kind and generous invitation. I am merely feeding my coat because I realized that when I came before in my dirty work clothes, that I was not really welcome at this table. But when I returned in my fine clothing, in my fancy coat, that I was suddenly seen. And that helped me understand that it is not I who am welcome at this feast, but my coat. This story challenges us. When we state an intention to open our communities, our homes, our hearts, our lives, to widen our circles, that we need to search ourselves and be aware of the places where we might be keeping others out. That we get to choose to welcome in those who others might turn away. And in fact, to be radical in our acceptance. This story inspired this song. Who is my neighbor and who is my friend? Who do I welcome to step right on in? Who do I comfort with all of my love? May it be said of me that the answer is everyone. Let 'em in, let 'em in. The hungry and the ragged who've been tossed off by the wind. Let 'em in, let 'em in. Watch and see what goodness can begin. When am I open? When am I kind? When am I willing to share what's on my mind? When do I listen, even if I don't agree? May you find it's every time, that's who I strive to be. Let 'em in, let 'em in. Different and peculiar might become a trusted friend. Let 'em in, let 'em in. And watch and see what new